get better understanding of how to manage teens with all the pressure and exposure on internet. Okay, great. All right, getting to know how to start the conversation. Koi Ngugi, starting the conversation with my son who's turning 2 digits soon. Okay, we're going to talk about that. Just looking through the comments to learn how to navigate as my son's parent of teen and preteen, hoping to be equipped to have more candid conversations. How to handle sex topic with my 16-year teenage. All right. Yeah, 15-year-old. So much that I don't understand going on right under my nose. With my son, we're very open with each other, but I still want to learn and possibly be a step ahead if ever. One of the things my kids have told me is that I'll never know everything that there is to know. And they're never going to tell me everything that there is to tell me. So right now they're telling me things like they hope that I am grown up enough to handle what it is that they're doing. So welcome to today's conversations. Today we are going to be led through this session by myself and Mark Duarte. So for those who we haven't met, my name is Shalom Muniri, and I'm an author on parenting matters. I've written 2 books on parenting and 1 on connecting with the younger generation, because I'm really passionate about adults and the younger generation connecting with each other. And having dealt with them, counseled them, because I also do counseling, and having conversations with them, a lot of what comes out is that disconnect between them and adults is what's making a lot of things difficult. And so when let me say, a couple of months ago, a young group of ladies had this thing on Instagram going about the rape culture. And so I got concerned about their opinions and talked to them privately. And then now this whole story of the radio hosts who are in trouble about jokes that they made about the girl being thrown off a roof brought up these conversations. And we are having a conversation with Pastor Wagata. He shared a post, and we thought it's about time we started having conversations publicly about the daring things that we are talking in hush tones as parents. And today we are actually going to be digging in before we go to the future. So for me, because the journey has been, I think it has happened really fast. My biological son, my first biological son, the older one, is 25 years old. And I feel as though the 25 years have just flashed by. When we were celebrating his quarter century, I could remember his 6-month birthday, because we celebrated as though 6 months was such a big deal. And yes, it was for me as a young mom, but here we are at 25. I have goofed seriously on that journey, and there's some things that I have done pretty well. And I think these are conversations that we all need to be having. So I'd like to invite Mark to introduce himself also briefly, and then we'll just dig in and have these conversations. And we'll go over some of the comments that you have made. So Mark, karibu.
Asante sana. Thank you so much. My name is Mark Duarte. Where do I start? I am married to one wife, Koi Duarte. Together we have had 3 children. The oldest is 8, youngest is 2. So I am enjoying the conversation because I am at the nini, what do you call it?
Brink.
At the brink of it. Ndio nimefika kwa beach, naona vitu ziko mbele, nasema woi. But also I have been a youth pastor for the last 15 years. Started pretty young, but that my passion has been young people since then until now. I have been doing that. So currently I am a youth pastor at Nairobi Chapel South, which is we would normally meet when we meet at the College of Insurance in South Sea. And also have started a youth platform called the Plug Youth. So basically a space where it's more about dealing with the young people on a personal basis, and basically figuring out how to disciple them and how discipleship can help their situation. I think I appreciate there are people like Shalom and the rest who do therapy. But I'm not very equipped in that area. So for me, I use my nini of pastoring to help on the other end of the equilibrium. Yeah.
All right.
Anything else you would want to know?
Well, I think you're going to share as we go along.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, I think you're going to share as you go along, because how I'm hoping these conversations will work is that we are not just going to come and give you information. You will ask questions, we will interact and answer them, and just get to know, where each one of us is at. So why did we start with our past, present, and future? First and foremost, we need to be real honest with our past. And I'm not necessarily saying go publicly announcing what your past is, as much as acknowledging what your past is and then being aware of what it has to do with, your parenting process or how you even interact with the younger generation. Because some of us act so shocked because we've become Christians and we forget that these are some of the things we went through when we were growing up. Some of us also act as though they are growing up in our era. I think there's somebody who has talked about wanting to know about this new world and how things are going on. And when we're talking, Rebecca is also asking about handling LGBTQ issues. Those are things that we're going to be dealing with. Why? Because they didn't start now. They weren't even there in our age. They were there from way before, way before. So homosexuality is not a new thing. It's just the way it's been packaged that has changed. And those are some of the things we'll be looking at. So how do our pasts come into play? Now, I don't know you personally. I don't know you enough to know what your sexual past looks like. But evolution of sex is not just about sex itself. It's evolution of sex as far as it has happened in your lifetime. So if I grew up when sex was defined a certain way, how has it changed over my period growing up? I remember I was exposed, the first sexual scene I saw, I grew up in an estate and there was this guy having sex with some chick in a ditch, the city council those days were very good at keeping our drains clean. And so people could do anything in drains. I think as a kid, I even used to walk through some of those, we call them taros. And so it was easy to have sex in a drainage place. And that's where I first saw it. And what happened was, as kids in the estate, there's some who knew what was going on, others didn't. And so somebody went shouting, kina nani wanadinyana, translation, so-and-so is having sex in there, in whatever they were pointing to. And we all ran there as kids to see what is this thing and what is being done. When I was in class 3, I think I was in class 3, my younger sister brought me a Playboy magazine. They had been having a look at it in their class, and then they brought it to me because, she was just thinking, okay, I don't think we're supposed to be seeing people naked. And so she brought it to her big sister. And so we hid it because we knew this is not the kind of thing that we want to see. We want to be seen seeing or looking at. But from that early age, I got to know that there's something more to just this thing that your parents keep telling you, oh, don't look, don't do. So today, when I see parents getting shocked that their children are getting exposed, I try to imagine, we didn't even have phones at that age. Right now, your children have access to phones. You should expect your child to have actually, experienced or seen some pornography at some point by mistake. That's where I think we should all start from. Let's acknowledge that pornography was there in our past. Sex was being had, wantonly in our past. You also had experiences in your past. Now, the experiences each one of us had are as personal can be. I do not know when or whether any one of you got exposed to pornography. I do not know when or whether any of you got exposed to sex with a relative. I don't know any experience you may have had, whether it is being violated or just being exposed, being curious or not. One of the things I know is that honesty with ourselves is the best and first place to start. So when we are talking about the past, I can't prescribe what your past is or what it was, but I can tell you how my past came into play. And I'm not here to share the gory details of my sexual past. That's not what this is all about. This is about really being honest with seeing how did what happened to you influence your journey moving forward. Some of us, I do not know who or what or where you may have been offended. Let me start with those who may have been abused or, just sexually exposed when they were young. You felt it was wrong. You probably did not share it with anybody and decided to keep it secret. So what happens, you grow up, maybe you are growing up, and I'll create different scenarios. Maybe you are growing up in this nice Christian space, so you couldn't talk about it. And so you suppressed it and put it right at the back of your mind. It happened once and it will never happen again. Then fast forward, you get your own children and you start bringing them up so locked up, so protected, so hidden, so that you can protect them from something. At that point, because you buried it in your subconscious, you don't even know that it is there. You don't know that it's what is driving you, but then you find yourself, keeping your children away and not having some of these conversations. I have had situations where people realize, oh gosh, that must be why I'm treating my daughter in such and such a way. That's why I'm treating my son in this way. If, for instance, again, another scenario, the father of your son, you have a son, and so the father of your son violated you sexually. And I mean, it could be on the emotional level, it could be physically, they did something to you. This son may represent that experience. So you end up bringing him up in different ways. So some people, I have seen very many mothers trying to correct their boyfriend issues through their sons. They're trying to make the son romantic because their husband wasn't romantic. They're trying to make their son the thing that their husband wasn't. So you start correcting your past in this present. And we're going to go see how that then affects your kids much later in life. So those are some examples to look at. Some of us did not have any negative sexual experience, all right? And even if nobody touched you, nobody did, let's not look at the negative side. If you didn't have a conversation about sex, or if the conversation you had about sex was that it is bad and it is only reserved for marriage, you could be struggling with your life right now. Why? Because you didn't. Now this ends up being a whole new world. So there's people who remained virgins and they got married, did everything step by step the right way, the way the church or family had prescribed it. And then now you have a teenage daughter who you have caught with pornography. It becomes very hard to even understand where this is coming from. I know a 7-year-old who was beaten up the other day. And so this was actually brought to my attention by a young person. And they were saying there's a 7-year-old who was beaten up because they were curious about their sexuality. So they asked the mom something about lesbianism, and the mom was so offended, she beat them up. You cannot beat sexual orientation out of someone. Let me just say that outright. So when we're having the conversations about LGBTQ, if any of you have tried to beat your children because of sexual curiosity, you already headed the wrong direction. And Mark will be dealing with that later. So basically, we have children who are as curious as we were, and our past, however clean or not clean, comes and affects how we are bringing them up. I personally was brought up in a Christian home. I knew what I'm supposed to do, but due to various reasons, first and foremost, my personality, and then secondly, my processing of information, I decided to have sex before getting married. So by the time I was having to have the conversation about sex, somebody talked about their son approaching double digits. I remember I started having conversations with my son about sex very early on. And at the back of my mind, I knew if I had sex before marriage, this kid is 50% mine. Of course, they might make the same decision. So when parenting them, I needed to look at my past, see the things that I got curious about, see the things that I had issues with, and bring that into my parenting. So that I'm not bringing up this boy and thinking he will never be exposed to pornography. My issue was he will be exposed to pornography. So can we talk about it from the get-go? So even when we were having the sex talk, I smiled because when he turned 10, he came to the kitchen. I was doing something in the kitchen. I don't remember whether it was cooking or cleaning, but I was in the kitchen. And he comes and closes the door. And then he tells me, Mom, can we have the talk? And so I asked him, what do you mean by the talk? And he was so disappointed because he wanted me to get shocked. He said, parents nowadays keep calling this thing the talk. But you see, with him, I had started talking about sex much, much earlier. When do you start talking to your child about sex? You start when they're about 3 years old. Okay? Somebody was saying their child is approaching, I think, double digit, and they would like them to start having conversations about sex. The talk about sex starts from about 3 years old. And why do I say 3 years old? Because sex is not about sex. And that's where the evolution of sex comes in. Sex is not just about sex. Omboi Pole for shocking you too early. Sex is about boundaries. Sex is about the organs. Sex is about curiosity and understanding some of these things. Sex is about esteem. Our teenagers, and we'll get there, are making certain sexual decisions because they need to sort out esteem issues. So because we haven't handled esteem issues, they go and solve them in a sexual way. So sexuality is a conversation that you start having as early as 3. There are little kids who, I mean, boys, you know, will, and I'm sure, yeah, we have both guys and ladies on the group. Young boys, little boys play with their penises when they are small, between 2, 3 years old, you know, up to about 4. They're curious. And then they touch it and, you know, they get this hard on and they're wondering why. Most mothers blush and slap this little boy's hand. And that's where part of the shame journey begins. Because instead of you explaining to him what it is and what's going on, you hit him, you think it's a disgusting thing, you're looking at it from a sexual point of view, and the poor guy just, it feels good. It feels good to touch his penis, you know? It's a thing that just feels okay. So if we don't understand that that is fine, we get into the thing with an embarrassed, shameful, don't you dare do that kind of thing. And you start making a boy feel dirty about a natural thing, which means that the next time he's feeling good about it, he's going to keep it secret. And there's masturbation that starts at that level, and then now there's the one that starts with information a lot later. And where does this come from? Maybe nobody told you that it was okay. Maybe nobody told you that it's actually normal for a boy to behave like that. And so you get embarrassed about it. The penis is as much a body part as the hand and arm and leg is. So you need to get comfortable enough talking about some of those things so that you can start the conversation early. I told you sex is about boundaries. At 3, you need to start having conversations with your children about who watches them, who touches them, who does what with them. They need to start learning how to wash themselves. Understand that we are not trying to say that when a kid is washing himself or herself, it is to make themselves perfectly clean. No, it is to learn how to manage their own body. Then, depending on who you have helping you at home, you do not want to leave thinking that if your child doesn't shower in one day because you're not there, then they're going to be dirty. They can stay. If you feel you're the one who has to clean your kid, it's okay. They can stay without getting clean that day. You come and clean them either in the evening or the next morning. You can work it out. But be the one who's teaching your child boundaries, but not from a shameful point of view. When they are washing their buttocks, when they are washing their, their private parts, you can call them vagina. It depends on how. You need to start getting comfortable with some of these things so that your child can also be comfortable. Why? As they grow, then you can end up having the deeper conversation. If you've never been comfortable talking about your body and your body as it is, then you'll not be comfortable talking about it a little later, right? Then somebody is sharing and saying, even girls can feel dirty. I want to go back a little bit. Just for the record, I'm Christian, born again, and I sincerely believe that sex was created by God for his glory. Let me just say that outright. Hence, therefore, your body was created to respond a certain way sexually. Mpende, msipende, whether you like it or not, your body was created to respond a certain way sexually. Now what happens is, when you're young, and you don't understand what's going on, and you get sexual stimulation from wherever, you can go off on the wrong tangent. Now, again, because I said I don't know our pasts, I will ask that you reflect on your own past to see how far back can you remember? What is your sexual history like? What do you remember about your sexual experience? Was it pleasant? Was it not? Now, here's the thing. Sex is not necessarily heterosexual. Sex is sex, all right? Sexual stimulation is sexual stimulation, which means if the first person who stimulates you sexually is you're a female and they're female, you are going to still respond sexually, but start getting it into your mind that you might be a lesbian because it's a female who has stimulated you and you have felt good. Sex feels good, okay? If it's a guy, fine. Now, here is where the trouble is coming when our kids and all are going through this process, is that they're getting to a point and they're wondering, so am I lesbian? Am I gay? Am I bisexual? What's going on? And they're looking for labels. And those labels are available. Where is this coming from? Your past has made you not have open conversations with your kids. So where do they go for information? Elsewhere. And so they're readily getting information. I will be sharing a document because I found it free. I'll be sharing it on the Dare to Be Parenting group a little later, but it is a report on the LGBTQ situation in Kenya. And the people doing that report were making a business and economic case for inclusion of the LGBTQ community. Now, the other day because again, I think I told you when I was introducing myself that I work with young people. Some kids put me to task and they asked me, so what is my stand as far as this whole LGBTQ thing is? And they asked me, am I an ally? Now, what has happened with the conversations we are having today is that everything has to be so black and white. You're always being told pro this or anti this, pro this or anti the other. And so we end up walking around on eggshells. Where you need to be comfortable is that when your kids come and challenge you with some of those questions, you're able to say, where exactly do you stand? So for me, where exactly did I stand? I do not approve or feel that it is okay, but I do not disapprove of the person. All right? So at the end of the day, we had a long conversation back and forth and they decided that I'm an ally. But why am I an ally? Because I have understood the evolution of sex. Where did sex start from? Sex started from wherever it is you started. If it was called dirty, if as a girl you thought it was dirty, if as a boy you thought it was dirty, if you thought it was for power play, whatever it is that you thought sex was from the beginning is where sex started evolving for you. All right? And therefore your story started. So you grew up, some of us with shame, some of us without shame, some of us very proud to be having sex at 16, no problem. And so we get into the process and by the time we are 21, we are very experienced. Okay? Now with that experience, what comes in? Sexual activity brings about babies. Some of us had abortions beforehand. That was not, it was a decision that is related to sex, but it wasn't a decision about sex. So when I say sex is not just about sex itself, what makes a girl reach the point where she feels, I can't bring up this baby, and then goes back and has sex again? I've got friends, I've got relatives, I've got kids that have had to cancel, who have had multiple abortions. Why? Because their sexual script, the script that they wrote as they were growing up, was a bit warped. And they have reached the point where they're separating sex from the outcome, you know? And that happens a lot with girls. That happens a little less with boys because girls are the ones who have to carry the burden of the baby. So in your past, again, how did you get your first child? For those of us who are parents, how did you get that first baby? I remember one time talking to now my first biological child and telling him he was a love child. You know, like for me, because I didn't get him when ready to have him. I got him because, yes, I was pregnant because of decisions that I made. I said he was my love child. Why? Because it was the fact that I was in love that I had sex with this guy and he became my son. I mean, he came to be rather. How did you get your first child? If it was as a result of what we call it, drunk sex, for instance, you may have brought up that child with guilt. You need to go and forgive yourself. You need to go and deal with that past. If it was as a result, very unfortunately, about rape, and you were brought up in an era where you could not get rid of this child either through abortion or adoption, you could not give up this child, they remind you, they are a reminder of a sexual violation. How you bring them up will be affected. So your evolution of sex is different from my evolution of sex. So the evolution of sex I want us to talk about is not something that you would put in a history book. I'd like us to make it as personal as possible. Now let's go to those who, like we said, had no sexual experience. You had zero sexual experience. You listened to everybody who told you need to stay a virgin. You need to stay pure. You need to, do everything right. Wait for this man when you get married, wait for the time. And then you go, and unfortunately, it doesn't turn out as rosy as you had been told, or maybe nobody had told you anything about it. And so you're in shock and you're in pain. There's a friend of mine who was totally frigid right through, because she couldn't believe that this is what she has signed up for. And she had no history whatsoever. Then here you are, you have a lousy sexual experience and you're married and you feel stuck. You're stuck in this relationship. What do? Again, you start writing a sexual script, and the evolution of sex for you becomes a different story. So each and every one of us, right now we are about 45 on the Zoom call, I don't know how many on Facebook, each and every one of us has a different story. So I would say, pause and think, what's your story? And how has it come? How has your past come to play this far? Because then I'll talk about the stages that we are at and how we are getting on from here. And this is shocking men and affecting the older generation of women. And I don't mean old 70, I mean old 40. What is your past like? And how has it come to play as we are getting through this journey? Pause for thought. I promise you, I don't want your answers. I want you to keep this one because, by the way, this is being recorded live. So if you're going to speak with your mouth, then just understand that this is going to be out in the public domain. I'm not worried about mine because, well, my story has been heard by very many people and even young children, so to speak. As you're thinking about yourself, let me just share one random thing that I was asked by some 10-year-old girls. We're talking about sexuality, we're talking about their periods and things like that. And a question that I've never actually thought about, but they asked me was, what's the point of having pubic hair? I don't know about you guys, but I had actually never thought what the point of having pubic hair was. Because I grew up believing that it's a kind of thing that marks you as an adult. You're moving from childhood to teenagehood. And so you grow the pubic hair. But they asked me if we are being told to shave it because we need to be clean or because which boy likes us, what's the point of having pubic hair? Why can't God just leave it? Why does it have to grow? Kind of thing. I actually did not have an answer for that. I told them, take two, I'll look for the answer and come back to you. So if any of you know why on earth we have pubic hair and what its value is in this whole story, please let me know. Then maybe I can answer those girls. But here's the thing, if they're already curious about pubic hair, they're going to ask about vaginas. They're going to ask about penises. They were asking, how do you get pregnant? We needed to have a conversation about that. Then let me move to another interesting thing I had from some older girls. One of them, when asked about getting children, she said she would actually donate all her reproductive organs if she could, And so they're looking again and they're thinking, I'm not interested in necessarily being a lesbian. I don't want to do anything about my gender, but I don't want kids. I think I would rather donate all my reproductive organs. When I've done sessions and, done like surveys and questionnaires with kids, they actually do not want children. Why don't they want children? Some of them are looking at you guys as adults and thinking, not interested in this kind of adults. Another young man told me he loves his children too much to bring them to this world. So when I asked, what does that mean? He says, I'll keep my sperm to myself because if I go donating sperm, then it means that I might bring children into this world and it stinks. I don't like what we are doing here. Then while investigating and finding out what's going on with this thing, they say, I mean, like, you know, chicks are pretty to look at, but they come with a lot of drama. So I'm not gay, but I don't want anything to do with all the drama. All of those, by the way, are sexual scripts being written. Why? Because as this child of yours is developing, so are their hormones. So a point is coming when, guess what? Their hormones will be raging, they won't know what to do with them, and they'll be told this is how to practice safe sex. All you need is a hand. I'm not making that up. There was a Facebook group. I caught a young girl on it. It was a book, it was a group about, not Facebook, it was Instagram. It was a group on masturbation, and they said, all you need is a hand. Therefore, there's going to be training for your young Christian girls, for your young Christian boys, for your 10-year-olds, because they're being told they have to stay virgins, they will be taught how to masturbate. Not they will, they are being taught how to masturbate. This is present. Current, continuous, present. That's something that is happening. Why? Because we are not having those conversations. Because well, so hand will become dirty too. Hand is easy to wash. So do the hand, come out, it's safe, you're a virgin. Another one I've had with some high school girls who are practicing lesbianism. They said, at least by the time we come out, you know, by the time we're having sex with a guy, we'll still be virgins. So virginity and purity has actually been misunderstood. Back again to your past. What were you told? What's the script that you wrote for yourself, whether male or female? You know, and how is it playing out? I'm liking some of these things. I'm liking some of these comments, so let me just read some of them. Somebody's saying, chicks are way pretty to look at, but they come with much drama. I totally agree, by the way. And nowadays I hear that when you're having such a conversation, if I say something positive about a girl, I need to qualify and say no homo, just so that you know that I'm not making a lesbian statement, you know? And so, yes, chicks are pretty to look at, and yes, they come with much drama. That's not a safe statement. There is a guy who, I think he was the Olympics, one of those Olympic chiefs or something, I don't quite remember. He said that women talk too much. He had to resign from his position because nowadays it is not safe to say certain things. Samuel says back in the deep traditional age, they never shaved, they just kept clean, right? They just kept clean in their own ways. One time I was having, and that's true, one time I was having a conversation with some parents about sex, how to talk about sex with your children. And somebody asked, if all I have seen is animals giving birth, how do I translate that for my son? I have seen how animals mount each other. How do I describe to my son what sex is? And I can't tell him what me and his mom do. By the way, your kids think about it and they have conversations about it. And yeah, Wanjiru, I think that will be an expectation and I'll deal with that in a short while. But what I'm saying is think through, get into your own past, be honest with yourself. And I'm saying do that privately and think, how has all that come to play? And then now we can look at where are our children at. So I think I'll ask Mark to actually tell us, because remember he said that he works with young people. As I look at the comments, Mark, you can probably tell us what you have heard from these young people. What you've heard about from these young people.
So basically, I think before I even say what I've heard with the young people, I think my dealing with the pastor, the way I think church has approached this conversation, because we grew up in a space where church actually didn't empower us. They disempowered us from having this conversation. So I remember in church, I would be, someone would say, no, don't even think, like even thinking about it is sin. So you would leave church in a state of, you actually don't know anything about sex. You actually just know you shouldn't engage in it. You shouldn't talk about it. You shouldn't even look at a woman lustfully. Like, that's all church presented for us as young people. Then if I backtrack before that, like when now I was younger, before I got into a space that was church or where there was religion, I actually found out about sex is a sin from my younger brother. Can you imagine?
Sex is a sin. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we're having this conversation, and I was telling him, man, as in, hey, me, I can't wait. I can't wait to have sex. This is the best invention in the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. So he asks me, don't you know that the Bible says that sex before marriage is a sin? I was like, where in the Bible? Like it was a debate. He had to go and look for scriptures. And this is when we are like 10, 11. So he's a year younger than me. So when I discovered this, I'm like, shucks, how can God do this? How can God create such an amazing thing and then put restrictions on it? Like, why? What is the point here? You get. So with that experience, going now into teenage, and you're getting to church, and you're having different types of situations, you've encountered pornography. I came to a point of realization first. I think my point is two: one, church; two, parents, like family. So I realized in our home, like many other homes, the conversation about sex was a taboo. My mother is extremely shy. The moment the topic appears, she just, in fact, even talking before people is a problem. So she's extremely shy. But one day, that she found my wallet. So back in the day, as boys, having condoms in your wallet was like, what do you call it? Like a badge of honor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you are not sexually active, but you had to have one to just show every other person that unajua mi waga niko ready, and you had to get the expensive ones. So you had some studded CG whatever, like brand that looks very, very expensive, just to upgrade your self-esteem. So my brother come and tells me, hey, dude, your mother has found your wallet. So I was ready for the conversation. So she comes and she's like, we need to talk. I'm like, we're not talking. She's like, we need to talk. We're like, we're not having that conversation. And I think I was like 16 by this time. And I'm thinking, in my head, I was thinking, I have found condoms in this house before. So please do not try and pretend that these are the first ones you've seen, or I am the first one to bring them into this house. Mind you, I come from a single parent house before, just for context. So that conversation ended like that. And when you now, I realized as parents, we have no knowledge. It's either because we are in a busy culture, like you wake up at 5, you're home by 8 jioni. It's a cycle. We have no time to realize what is going on in our children's world, and then an event happens that shocks us out of that state into the state of, oh my God, I think my child knows in too much. What do I do? So you're already caught unawares in that situation. And then when they come to us in church, most of us, what we will do is we try and give an antidote or but by the time a kid comes and opens up to me, it is too late. Like it is, they're telling me I'm pregnant, or I already got raped by my boyfriend, not even by a stranger, or they have already had a sexual encounter. So like by the time they're like 10, 11, the topic normally I start with is called sexperimentation. So when we get into sexperimentation, you realize these kids know what kissing is. They started the kissing encounter maybe when they were 9, 8. I remember there's a day we were from camp, and we dropped 7 and 8-year-olds who, in the estate, they're supposed to go home. And what we discovered later is that they were in the corridor making out. And these are like 8, 9-year-olds. Like it's to me, it was shocking because I was like, where did they learn this? And I realized as parents, I was told that the first encounter about sex normally is from the house. It's not from outside. It's either a cousin who was invited, a parent who maybe was watching something and left it on their phone, an uncle who was coming for a nini. We were going to Shago for a sleepover. Like those are the environments. And because we are not watchful and we don't see what is happening, we miss those points where we could have rescued or we could have known what to do with our kids. So if it's some of the things that I've encountered are a bit gory to share, but let me see what I can share. There's one, I think one that just really shocked me is a kid coming and telling me that in church, they were in church. Okay, the first one, of course, is one with their kids who've been caught in church toilets having sex during a kids camp. Two, this one is you're being told that a girl was forced to have oral sex in the toilet during church when the service is going on. That one was I think the height, the level of so having to deal with this and then thinking, even approaching the parents to even let them know this has happened. You don't even know where to start because you're like, this will be paralyzing for you, first of all. So the kid is also not willing to let the parents know because they know the parents. So the struggle is what will be done to her, what will happen to her or him if this information gets out. And I think those are the challenges we deal with as youth pastors. You find that the kids, and especially kids of nowadays, I feel like we started puberty at a later date, because I remember even in science, we were taught these things at 12 years in class 6. For them, it's happening way earlier. So you're dealing with an 8 to 9 to 10-year-old who already is kind of in a pre-adolescent stage, or is already. And how I could tell is that I remember there's a class I did for kids who are now maybe 21. Back then, they were like 11 and 12. These kids would come into class and they would separate, like they would sit boys on this side, girls on this side. And it was a crime for them to, if you wanted to punish them, make them sit next to a girl or a boy. This year I've tried it. I went into the class like this. They were already mixed. Like, here's your issue. Like they were already, this is maybe like 9-10 years down the line. They're not dealing with that. They already advanced at 11. They're like, me, in fact, I'm shooting my shot. I need to have a girlfriend by now. Everyone is having a girlfriend and stuff like that. So it's also that the generation has changed. Times have changed. Keeping up with the times, keeping up with what is happening. I think maybe the last one I can share is we had gone out. In fact, we were with you, Pastor Shalom. We had been invited to a church, which is, I can't remember the name of the church, but I remember we were facilitating, and then one of the kids asked us about being gay. And this kid was like, is it wrong to be attracted to the same sex, but you're not practicing? Like, and then in that point, I actually realized, there are actually people who are attracted to the opposite sex, the same sex, and they consider themselves gay, but not practicing. So they because of the information they've received, the challenges they've been through, self-esteem issues, how they were introduced to sex. So they find themselves in that space. And when they come to church becomes the space where they are rejected first. So the kid was like, I want to know what's wrong with me. They were genuinely asking, what is wrong with me? And is it my fault? Where am I at? Am I going to hell? That type of situation.
And that for me, I think is a very valid question. Like you're saying, in the church setting, we say that we are waiting for marriage, right? So we are not practicing sex.
Yeah.
But we are heterosexual.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with somebody being homosexual and not practicing it?
We, as church, we are not ready for that conversation. All we know is what the Bible, all we know is what the Bible says, that homosexuality is a sin, and it is wrong. So we end up not, I think the challenge I have found is, and it's what I've been trying to resolve when I teach kids about sex, is that sex in itself is not a problem. The problem is when you're having sex, the timing.
Okay, when you're having sex, yeah.
So the problem is, God has said sex is after you get married.
Yeah.
So the act itself has no problem. The problem is when God said for it to be done.
Context.
So, and then when I try and explain, sex is good. In fact, when God created everything, he said it was good. So I even try and say, imagine a scripture, if God was creating sex, what he would have said. He would have said, it is good and perfect in my sight.
Yeah.
So in fact, that theology itself, it is very shocking for kids because they're like, they've been told these things about sex. Sex is bad, don't try it, don't let a boy touch. Like all those things are the ones surrounding them in their head. So by the time they are coming to church and you're trying to explain to them that sex is good, the problem is when God said, they don't get it completely. They don't, it's how the information has gotten to them. So my response has always been, how do I empower them through the word of God? How do I tell them that you can wait for marriage, or you can go through this thing without the fear and the anxiety and the problems that are there. And if already you've sinned or you've already experienced it, God does not put you into hell already. Like there's hope for you in this conversation. Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to put in mind and think about some people. And this, again, allow me to just move from, past, present, past, present, past, present, because that's what is affecting our children today. So this person grows up and they're told to wait for when they will be married. And so they wait for when they will be married. There were jokes in the chat going on about thinking about your parents having sex was taboo, And here's the thing, however taboo it was, we still thought about it. And I remember having a conversation and we would calculate. I mean, once your children understand that 9 months later is when a child is born, they do the hesabu backwards. And they say, I know you had sex on such and such a day.
Yeah.
And that's how this baby was born. So our children talk about it, we talked about it, etc. One day in a class, this is one of the most interesting explanations about sex that I had from a kid. This child was 12 years old. I think it was about 12, 13 years old. And I always start by asking them, what is sex? And I will read verbatim what he wrote. He said, sex is a sensation when a man puts his erection to the woman's destination, not only for implantation, but also to increase population.
I will repeat.
Sex is a sensation when a man puts his erection to the woman's destination, not only for implantation, but also to increase population.
Boy, okay.
Okay. When I was when my kids were in class 1, we used to do this carpooling thing. And I remember one boy seeing this billboard for trust condoms. And he says, I know what a condom is. And the other kids ask, so what is a condom? And he says, it's something that big boys put on their kasusus to feel good. They were all of 5, 6 years old. They know these things.
Yeah.
They are having these conversations. Samuel, yes, this kid is super smart and he's a poet, but I want us to get into any conversation you'll have with your child, understand that they already know a lot more than you think they do. We have some of us, let me speak as us representing women. There are this older generation of women, 40s and all, and probably even in my mother's type of age, 70s and above, who thought that sex was only had at night. Yeah, so it happens when you go to bed and you're not in bed during the day. So it happens at night. It didn't occur to them that sex can be had during the day. And so we had a lot of, let me call it adultery, people dogging on others because they would have sex during the day and then come back home to the wife. And so adultery became a thing in our history, for many of us in our past, because we still did not think that sex can be had outside of a certain home. People thought sex is only had in a bed. Sorry, there are grown-up women who believe sex was only had in a bed. Then guess what? They go and have it in a closet. And what happens is babies form, relationships form. Soon, 6 months later, I have a girlfriend and she has a baby. And you're wondering, when did you have sex? And you always have dinner with us guys. And then you're in the office all the time. It doesn't take much. So one of the other things that we explain to kids is that you don't need, if a man is going to produce 1 million sperm, you don't need the million, you need only one. And it can happen the minute that the first time that you have sex. Again, lots of young girls think that you cannot get pregnant the first time you have sex. Let's demystify all of these myths, and we shall be looking at them, bit by bit as we go on. So for now, if I can sample some of the comments and questions that people are asking. More, I don't know whether to spell this as Mo or Moe, but anyway, somebody's asking, how best then do you probe for what they know so that you can shape it better, hopefully? First and foremost, you need to define what better is. And I'm not saying to me, I mean to yourself. Let me just step back a little bit and say, whatever the age your child is now, start building a relationship. And how do you build a relationship with your child? Based on their age, is just getting to know them better, getting to interact with them, getting to, what do I call it? Getting to just know their world, okay? Now, once you have started being allowed into their world, start having conversations about the people around them, conversations about what they think about certain things, seek their opinion, just try to understand, okay? So when we are talking about probing, build probing on the relationship, not on an inquisition. Yes, that's what it is. Do not put the child under some form of interrogation. They will not tell you. Children trust us little by little. When I meet kids for the first time, because I know that trust is built over time, I don't dive straight into the subject matter, even if I know we are going to need to dig in. We start talking about simple, seemingly irrelevant stuff. When they get to the point where they can trust you, they will tell you a bit more. So how do you want to shape it? First and foremost, seek their opinion. Always seek first to understand where they're coming from. And that is much easier to find out when you're building a relationship. Then from there, decide for yourself. Why I'm talking today about the past is because if you're okay with people having sex before marriage, and then you want to tell your child not to, you're going to be a hypocrite. You're going to be a hypocrite. So first accept what it is that you stand for, and then understand what you're shaping them towards. I told you, like for me, I had sex before marriage, but I don't think they should have sex before marriage. So when I was talking about why they shouldn't have sex before marriage, I would say this is why, and this is what I experienced. These were my issues with the boyfriends I had, and this is how these are the things that were influencing my sexual decisions. So when I'm honest with them and I'm telling them, I don't think you should do this, at least I'm not telling them from the point of I'm dictating something. And they can tell by when they were born that, of course, I did not have a wedding before the sex. And so when you're honest with yourself, then you're able to get to the next point. Now, Kara is asking an example of a probing question. This always depends on the child. I would say like mine, because we started having conversations early, I'm able to ask the question directly. But now when I'm talking with other children, I try to find out the things that they like. So we build up the relationship step by step. Find out the things that they like, find out the things that irritate them, figure out the relationship they have with their parents. Who do they consider role models? Who is their support? You know, if a kid comes and tells me, I can't tell my mother, but I can tell my auntie, I'll ask the question, why? Why your auntie? You know, when did you become friends? How are you friends? So you just dig in a little bit. There are some who come and tell me, I can't talk to my parents, but I can tell my big sister. And so when I ask them about their big sister, why? My big sister knows this and the other. So you keep asking questions based on where this kid is at. I ask the older teenagers about how they're feeling. You know, how are they feeling? And if a child is feeling low, we dig in. For teenagers, if a child is feeling low, we dig in a little bit more in terms of what's causing that lowness. What would they do? When I ask children about why they wouldn't have sex, they keep saying, I can't because of this. So I like asking them the other question. So why would you have sex? What would make you have sex? So that we have that conversation. Mark, you're putting up your hand, tell me.
Yeah, I wanted to say, on the conversation about having this talk with your child, I think the other approach that could work is imagining that you're the person educating your child about sex, like you're the teacher, like so if there's any information that they need to know, they'd rather hear from you first than get it out there. And then it goes throughout the stages, because the sex talk at 5, 6, 7 is not the same at 10, 11, 15, 12, 13, and 15. So for example, because we live in a very sexualized culture, we have these conversations with them even without knowing. For example, I think the one I've been struggling with right now is the one for, as mothers, how they dress their children. So, okay. so at church, I can be in church, and then a kid comes in with booty shorts, like literally, I can see this one. So I'm like, how will you have these conversations later when you're telling them they cannot wear this thing that you've bought them at this age? Yeah, so the conversation is already happening. It's just that we live in an over-sexualized situation. So we're either doing it indirectly or directly. So we need to arrest that and start having the knowledge of, okay, later in life, I'll be having a conversation with my girl about 1, 2, 3. Later, I'll be talking about my boy about 1, 2, 3. So what am I doing right now that already has implications? Am I giving any information indirectly or directly, something like that?
Yeah. If I can give even illustrations, again, because we are a whole range of parents, the illustrations will vary based on the different ages. I remember one of the sex conversation is not a sex conversation. It is a continuous thing. It's something that you have all the time. It's something that let me put it this way. If you're not asking God to let you see the opportunities, you might miss many of them. Samuel is saying African culture has basically, let me read that. African culture has somehow dragged us from having an open conversation about sex. And I'd say it's not necessarily African culture as much as Africans picking up a Western individualized culture. Africans had a setup where there were aunties and uncles who used to talk to kids about sex. Okay, however warped it was. Because I know when my son were getting circumcised, him and his age mates, one of the things that I had is that beautiful girls would be brought to their circumcision camps so that they can practice self-control, so the boys can practice self-control. So that when they see this beautiful girl and they get this erection, of course, they're going to feel pain because they've just been circumcised. And so they have to control the brain or something. I mean, there were all those things happening. So I can't say that the African culture's methodology was the best, but it was there. But when we became individualized, we removed ourselves from a village setting, and therefore we did not create the support to have conversations about sex with our children. And here's what happens. If I'm shy about talking about something with my kid, I need to have somebody else in their life who can have that conversation with them. So again, much as we are saying have these conversations with your children and be the first one, at the same time build people around you who can have that conversation. I'm not shy, and I've got friends who are very shy about having sex conversations with their children. I start the conversation for some of them, for those who haven't started it. And then we move on from there. Try and do this with people who have the same values as you do, and therefore, you can build that up. Let me see. Yes, he says you'll be shocked how much smarter our kids are. Men, yeah, we are the ones who end up getting surprised by their questions, not them. You'll be shocked at the questions kids ask, but those ones we'll be sharing a little later. Somebody says, someone I know has several dogs. They thought that a novel way to introduce the sex talk was to let them watch the dogs mating and then pick up. Wow, I wonder how that worked. Because, okay, let me get a bit graphic here. If you look at how dogs have sex, and you look at how our teenagers are dancing today, when they're dancing and gyrating and rubbing their hips on, like the girls are rubbing their buttocks on these guys' poor penis, it really does look like dogs having sex, only that it's happening in a club. And that's basically how they're doing it, because this is where they're watching some of these things. So I'm not sure how, because the only thing that dogs can do is show you positions and things like that, and a lack of self-control, because when they want to go, they gotta go. So you need to explain that to your children a bit differently, because humans are a bit different from dogs. And then somebody, I think there was a question about what can the church do? Does the church have tools? Let me go back. Church has been indicted for her silence. We treat sex with a wall of indifference and ignorance. What tools and does the church have to change this? I will say without any whatever, I don't know what words to put in there, that the church first needs to be honest with itself. The same way we started this conversation of ours by saying, accept your past, be real with yourself, the church needs to first and foremost be honest with itself. If sex and sexual experience and sexual pasts are going to be treated with shame, I need to hide my past, so I cannot be talking about it in a church setting. So first and foremost, church needs to accept what its past looks like. Church needs to use the Bible literally for examples. The church needs to be telling, especially our kids, that, what Mark was saying, that sex is good. Sex is a God-given thing. Now, when the church tells the kids that sex should only be had in the context of marriage, understand that you're talking to a child whose father that they look up to has other children by other women. So the children we are teaching right now and parenting right now are coming from a situation where their parents have already had sex with other people because they have step siblings. They're living in blended families. So by the time we are packaging the sex conversation, we need to do it from an empathetic point of view, understanding that this is where our children are coming from. And this is how first we treat them with compassion, understand where they're at, then use the Bible to show them that this is where the hope is. One time, some kids were complaining about this young boy who was touching them in church, and they came and told me, stop doing, just tell him to stop. And when I went and told him, but we need to have a conversation, the guy told me, first go and tell that to my dad. Don't come lecturing me when my dad is doing the same thing with mamas in this church. So what I'm trying to say is, unless the church can actually deal with what's going on amongst its people and then understand what these kids are growing up with, they will not listen. Whatever it is that we try to do, they will not listen. So I'd say start with honesty. You need to be selling purity instead of virginity. So many girls have been told, remain a virgin, remain a virgin. We praise the virgin, we praise the virgin. We forget to teach them about purity of thought. So I've got girls who have said, men, all I've done is had lesbian sex, so I'm still a virgin, because they think that virginity is about penetration. So we need to be teaching the right thing as opposed to the overview, just that biological thing that there is. I went to that church because somebody said there are so many sex stories in the Bible. Exactly. One of the questions I ask boys is, has any of you killed the boyfriend of the chick that you want? And whatever sin they think they have committed sexually, none of them has killed the boyfriend of the chick that they want. Yet there's a guy called David in the Bible who actually went, saw a girl, had sex with her, and then killed her husband. just basically got her husband killed. And God comes and says, this is a man after his own heart. How did a guy like David make it? Now you teach the kid to have a relationship with God like David did. That's what I think the church should do. Be that real. We talk about when they come and talk about multiple sex partners that they have, I tell them none of them can beat Solomon. I mean, like Solomon had 1,000 women. That guy could have sex for 3 years without repeating one woman and have a sex every single day because he had 300 wives and 700 concubines, And so let the kids take some of these stories personally. The book Song of Songs has so many sexual innuendos and descriptions because God created this thing. So let the kids first understand that what you're feeling is normal. But then what is it leading you to? What is the power of sex? Let's start having conversations about what is the power of sex. Sex actually brings kingdoms down. Not just Christianity, brings kingdoms down, okay? Again, back to the conversations. I like the fact that many of you are talking to each other right here because all of us have a story. All of us have something that we can actually say about this conversation. Most of our cultures, communities taught their girls and boys about sex and the good and bad way before they transitioned into adulthood. Excellent. It wasn't placed as the conversation. It was a normal conversation about the circle of life and all. And now this is where, by the way, your role modeling comes in. Here's something I want us to please remember. Your present, see, we've moved from our sexual past. Your sexual present is actually going to be your child's sexual past. Your sexual present, what you're doing presently right now, sexually, is going to be part of your child's sexual past. They will be saying, I saw my dad do this, therefore I don't think there's anything wrong with this. I saw my mom do this, therefore I do not think there's anything wrong with it. Okay, so your sexual present is going to be your child's sexual past. Okay, yes, I like the conversations. Recently, I was in a mentoring class for work evolution of habits. Starts with a thought, great, then emotion to behavior, habit, finally, becomes a lifestyle. So many times we try to change the behavior without looking at thoughts. Just, okay, fine, exactly. So you see this purity of thought. By the way, when we are talking about perversion, I think we'll be talking about perversion and pedophilia and things like that on the 11th of May. We are really going to dwell on the thought process because it's our thoughts that take us there, right? Our thoughts are the ones that take us there. Solomon is a role model to a number of children and youths out here. Clearly, yes, Samuel, they behave as though Solomon is their role model. And they say, men, I need to counter these people. But we need to show them what happened to Solomon as a result of some of these things. We need to show them the book of Ecclesiastes. What did Solomon have to say about all of this? After he had chased the women, after he had done this life, he has gotten tired with all of this. What happened? We need to look at King Solomon's children. We need to look at the things that actually happened in the Bible and the other examples that we have out there. I was reading the more recent conversations, and if I can scroll a bit to the earlier ones, somebody says it's easier to be straightforward to a kid than beat about the bush. That's why we find children in States and Europe, India, and South Africa understand sex properly than kids in most other African countries. True. Some of the conversations I've had with kids, and again, I've been doing this for quite a number of years. Let me say, I think I've probably been talking about sex with children for 15 plus sort of years. And one of the things that I've noticed, those that we walked with the journey, we started by defining sex for them, helping them get comfortable with it, growing into the process, being with them when they're getting their crushes. They fall for this boy and then, the boy lets them down, or the boy falls for their girlfriend. There's all those other things. Or you think that this boy likes you, kumbe it's your friend that they like. The fact that we have walked that journey, which is why I don't disagree with sexual education, the less these girls have ended up getting interested in sex, the less these boys have ended up being interested in sex. And what I mean is not interested in sex as far as curiosity is concerned, it's interested in having it immediately. They postpone because we get them to the point where they're thinking, is this what I want to do right now? Do I have other priorities? what are the consequences of my having sex? And we get them to think about it, not from the point of regret or guilt or shame, but being quite practical. Am I ready for this? Because this is what it comes with. It will come with the drama of the women, or it may not. You might actually have a very good girlfriend. But the fact that you have thought it through will help you deal with the consequences, which is another big thing that I think we should be talking about when having sex conversations with our kids. Consequences. Just let them understand that they are the ones who are going to live with it. When I tell kids about what happened when I didn't get my child when I was very young. I think I was 23. I was just turning 23 when I got my first child. I tell them that these were the consequences of having this kid at this time for me. Because where was I at as far as my career is concerned? Where was I at with my friends? Where was I at as a kid? Where was I? What were my plans? And what did this do for that reason? Again, teach them not to regret. I believe, we are knit together in our mother's wombs. I believe parents are the ones who are illegitimate. There's nothing like an illegitimate child. Nothing like an illegitimate child. If God actually knew you before you were knit in your mother's womb, we are the ones who end up rewriting a script. But when God sees this is the direction we are going, I think he gets a plan for our offspring. So there's no kid who comes around by mistake. Okay? No kid who comes around by mistake. There was an interesting conversation here. Oh my, okay, I don't know. Okay, circumcision. My son called it kichinjio. Okay, and so I hope, so what I'm reading is a conversation about circumcision. I went through it without my father. I hope and pray I don't miss this part of my son's transition. Luckily, I had a mature and very great experience, but not having my father alive during that time was quite a big deal. I would know. Story for another day. Waihiga, can I give you a chance to speak? Because he's saying he's not one of the speakers of the day. I must admit my sex talk with my mom was fire. I had to be the one to have the sex talk with my son. My gosh, it was fire. Imagine having to explain some of these things when you haven't gone through the process. So dear moms of sons, and I think some of you had mentioned that a little earlier, moms of sons, you need to get brave, to get ready to have this conversation if there's no man around. However, if you can start planning that, I think Mark had mentioned that earlier about if you know that this is the direction, I don't have a husband or somebody who can help me with this conversation, start having guys around you who can have the conversation for your son. Back to the village story. Do not walk this journey alone. I know there's many gentlemen out there who can do a good job. That's why I like people like Akina Mark and Pastor Wagata, because I know that I can throw certain boys their ways. It doesn't matter how much experience I, as Shalom, have through this process. At some point, even when a boy comes to me, he can only be talked to by a man. So there are men out there who are ready to support those of us who are parenting sons on our own. So that's something that I'm saying again, why we are starting such conversations, and the group, like Dare to Be Parenting, is there for us to ask those questions. I'm solo on this journey. I have no clue what to do with my son. I really want to hand him over for adoption somewhere. He can come back at 21. What do? I hand you over to somebody like Mark to walk the journey with him, okay? Somebody has commented and said, if my present will be my child's past, then perhaps we should have a conversation about how to restore our parents' view of sex. Exactly, because for some, it's been distorted over time. This makes the sex talk a lot more difficult because we don't know what to pass on. There is rape in marriage that no one talks about. The day we agree to talk about marital rape, we're going to get a lot of freedom. Because I know many teenage girls who are having problems because their moms are being raped within the marriage setting and they're taking it out on the girls, and not taking it out in a bad way. They're trying to protect the girl. They're trying to protect themselves in the girl. And they're corrupting how the girl thinks about sex and, marriage as a whole. Because you're stuck in this marriage, you're being raped, you were brought up knowing that divorce is not an option, you're not doing anything about it, but what do? You make your child fear men, or you make your child hate men. I've got girls who have sat and said, I do not like men. Why? because of something my mom is going through or my mom has said, or, and that's why we go back. Start with your past and forgive yourself for some of these things. If you need to get out of the situation you're in, please get out of that situation. If you need counseling, I think I have seen several counselors on this call. Let us know and we'll connect you with counselors who can actually help you walk the journey, first and foremost, of repairing the marriage. And then also, how do you move forward? Because this is a journey that has to be very individual. Somebody said, true points, great consequence of our parents' failings are actually passed on to us, background and baggage. And trust me, if and when you get married, it's a tragedy in the waiting. Exactly. There's lots of them that have failed. Guys who are in this call, there are some things your wives are doing or the women in your life are doing, and you're wondering, what's up? It's their past. It's a real deal of, it's not you, it's them. It's one of those of, this is what's happening. So again, step into that situation, trying to understand where could you be coming from. There's a hashtag, restore our parents, because parents might have been pro-sexually, then their children end up being lethal weapons. Exactly. Yeah. So basically, what I would say is, if you're not real with yourself, you're going to be in trouble. Hiya, father is present but not having real conversations. How do you get the village around him to have the conversation without looking like you're going over his father's head? That's a good thing about a village. The good thing about a village is that when you invite people into the space, then you're allowing anybody to have the conversation, so it doesn't look like anybody is usurping the other's position. It's just a village. Okay, so what happens is, yes, the father, for whatever reason, they were not brought up that way, so they don't know how to have this conversation. If you have other people in the conversation, invite other families, maybe other couples, bring it up or have somebody else bring it up. By all means, you will find people who can have the conversation with them. I remember one time having we call it just an unstructured meeting. And we were supposed to meet for a few minutes and it ended up being like 4 or 5 hours of conversations. It's to just ask questions. We've got lots of things that are in the news that can help us have this conversation. For instance, this particular conversation about evolution of sex, it came from a post that Pastor Wagata had shared about these 3 guys, Shafi, Neville, and John Falme, who had been fired for having this, like a mockery of the girl who'd been thrown off a building. And what he did was break down, how did we actually get there? When you grab at the things you have in the news and ask your kid, would you make fun of a girl? Would you do this? And I think all of us, I don't know whether any of you have watched, one of the things that we talked about, even with my son as recently as the other day, was Lil Nas song that he unleashed the other day. And he was lap dancing the devil, and he was glorifying homosexuality. There are things that are going to be in their world and in the news that will help you have these conversations. So if the father is present but not having real conversations, bring people around you, use the news, use whatever is happening in the news to start the conversation, right? And that may help you get to the point where you're not feeling like you're going over somebody's head. Experience with sex education of 11 or 12-year-olds was just amazing. Class was run, okay. A lady taught that every person was taught. Class was run by a lady where each and every person was taught that no one should be ashamed of menstruation or wet dreams. Yes. They asked questions about sex and reproduction. Some kids already had lots of information. Yes, they do. Through the class, each one of them had something to learn. I do agree with it. I think you meant sexual education, not reproduction. So how best do you handle news of your child who believes they're bisexual and all their friends know except you? First and foremost, always back again to seek to understand why. Your child comes and tells you they think they're bisexual. Why do they think they're bisexual? When did they start thinking they're bisexual? Dig a little deeper into it, but do not start by telling them that they're not, because you do not know how much information they have. I was reading that report on the state of LGBTQ in Kenya, and it was just a collection of stories of how these young people got into their different sexual identities or adopting their different sexual identities. And many of them started confused nobody gave them proper information. And when they finally got online, in fact, there were many, many of them that said, when I finally found something on the internet, I was relieved when I did this. So if somebody comes and tells you, everybody knew, but you end up discovering that your child is bisexual, first seek to understand what makes them think they are, how did they get there, what experiences do they have so far. As Mark was saying earlier, they could be feeling attracted, but have they had sex already? Have they gone all the way? Are they planning to? Back again to, I don't know how old this child is, but like the 7-year-old who was being beaten and they hadn't done anything. They were just curious. They asked a question. So yeah, it's something that seek first to understand and then now deal with it pole pole. Because I think most of what you'll need to do is in the background. The expression of sexuality is really just an expression. It's a way of showing or dealing with something that's at the back of their mind. Mark?
Yes, I wanted to say,
yeah,
when it comes to the gay conversation, I think we need to get us some more information, and when we'll be, I think there's a day we'll be specifically talking about it.
Yeah, the fall.
Yeah, so yeah, to further understand what it, how to respond, but also to understand that the LGBTQIA plus has metamorphosized, like it is a different animal right now.
Yeah.
And the more you actually get to know LGBTQIA plus.
Yeah.
So there's more information out there about what is going on in that culture, because it's a culture by now. The other thing is that it has the music our kids listen to and the movies and series they watch pick up a lot of information from those situations. So we need to know what are they learning from this music and the TV things that they're watching, even the cartoons, like right from when they are 3, 4, 5. In fact, Pastor Shalom was telling me the one for which cartoon was that? Which one was it was like a kid TV.
Oh, bunnies.
Yes, bunnies. Like there was a bunny that had 2 moms or 2 dads or something like that.
Yeah, what happens, again, based on your children's ages, I think some of you know the Bunny the dinosaur, you know, and when he finishes, he normally sings, I love you, you love me, we are a happy family. Just before the song, he started saying some families have 2 mummies and some families have 2 daddies. So starting to teach it from an early age.
Yes, just being, I think knowledge is power. For me, that's what I go by. Knowledge is power. So, but if you have information, you can be able to know what to do and how to respond, even though we'll delve deeper later on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then there was the comment of sometimes, and I'll talk, there was an earlier comment I think I had seen about social media, but we didn't address it. And sometimes they're not willing to discuss with parents. They say there are things they cannot discuss or just don't want to talk. How do you break the wall? First and foremost, if there is a wall, imagine, guys, try and make it a habit to go to reflect, you know, to just do a bit of introspection. If your child has built a wall, when did they start building it? What was going on around their life at that time for them to build it? Again, because we are a whole lot of people, if we have not built that relationship with our children early on, we send them to boarding school when they're in class 6 or something like that. They learn to survive on their own. And as long as a kid knows how to survive on their own, they don't need you. And so go back to, before you can figure out how to break the wall, when did the wall start? How high is the wall? Then from there, if they're not willing to discuss with you, back again to, can you build a community around them that will let them have those conversations? I have noted that whenever we play games with kids, you know, we are not sitting down and lecturing them, and we are just having conversations. They open up a lot. And that's what Mark had mentioned earlier about he's running a group called The Plug, yeah? The Plug Youth.
Yes.
That's one of the places, like I really love it. They have Instagram lives that they do, and the kids just come and they talk about different issues. You know, they come and talk about just things that are going on. They talk about the stuff that's happening in their lives, what their friends are going through, you know, just what's it called? Just things that make their life tick and their life go round.
Yeah.
Have them in such spaces, and people like Mark pick up the information. They get to hear from other friends. And what I like about the plug youth group is that it is founded on Christianity. So yes, we will listen to what they have to say, and then at the end of the day, we ask, so what does God have to say about it? What does the Bible have to say about it? And instead of forcing values on your children, again based on their age, instead of forcing values on your children, help them own the values that they grew up with, right? Wahiga, thank you very much. In fact, there's this, the report I'm talking about was published by this gay and lesbian chapter. Yeah, the gay and lesbian chapter in Kenya. A link has been shared. Then somebody, Wanjiro says, my kids are fans of his first song. It's the Old Time Road, and the Old Town Road, sorry. And it was made so attractive. And when people came attacking Lil Nas about his song, guess what? He says, it's your fault as parents that you never listened to the actual song. It wasn't meant for kids. Just because the graphics and the videos are meant for kids does not mean that the song is meant for kids. Now, here's one way that we are breaking down. Like I told you, I work with youth, and we have a podcast that we have started for young people. And when having some of those interviews and we're having a conversation about this song, we talked about music and its effect. When we tell kids do not listen to secular music, what we do is make them ask, why shouldn't I listen to secular music? And if it's bothering you so much, all I have to do is listen in your absence. But of course, I've grown up telling kids, let's assess secular music. I'm not against secular music, because secular music is too broad to say don't listen to secular music. Help kids think critically about what they're listening to. And one of the songs that a young friend of mine, I think she's about 18 years old now, she was telling me that when she was about 8, 9, we would tell them not to listen to certain songs, and they were not understanding why. And one of the things she said is, when they were singing the words, I've forgotten what the song is, but it had something to do with, it said something like, sticks and stones can break my bones, but chains are something. It was glorifying chains. Now, when she was 9, it was just a song. Now that she's 18 and is a lot more sexually aware, she was asking, like, what was that we were saying? You know, like, we were actually okay with being tied up with chains. You know, that is sadomasochism and other perversions that we're going to talk about later. So help them see that the music that they're listening to, you're a grown-up. I'm hoping that you're at the place where you can listen to a song without having it influence you, and help a young kid break down what it is saying. Because when it came to this Lil Nas song that we're talking about, if you listen to the song without watching the video, it's not as offensive, to tell you the truth. It is not as offensive. The video is the most offensive part of the song. So then we had a conversation and we said, if you had not watched the video and you listen to the song and somebody else is doing a TikTok dance about it, you're actually going to be a bit okay with it. But when they see the video, then it becomes offensive. So help children understand that it's not just what they see, even what they listen to influences some of the things that they are forming, the ideas and beliefs that they're forming about themselves. Somebody else is sharing here. It also happens that if your teens and tweens tell you something and perfect, and you become judgmental or react and act surprised, they will shut you down and may not talk to you about the same issues again. They will always test you first, and how you react determines their next step. I mean, like, kudos and 100%, and thank you for bringing this up. I was telling you about my story and how I have been open with my children. There are things they tell me today, and they tell me there's no way they were going to tell me that they were doing some of those things earlier. because they knew I wouldn't be able to handle it. Your children panga you. Your children look at you and decide this is how much we are going to let through. And they think this is what you can handle. I think somebody had mentioned earlier, the things our kids know a lot more than they let up. We are having children who check us out, they see how we react, and guess what? They started studying your reactions when they were 2 years old. They didn't start at 12. When they were 2, they saw how you reacted to certain things. They see how you react when they do one small wrong thing. Then they know, aha, much as I like doing these wrong things, I'm not going to be caught. So the idea is actually not to get caught, okay? So we are teaching our children how to respond to us and how to give us certain information. There's a kid who I got to hear that they were watching pornography. And when I asked why, they didn't tell me about it. What they basically said is that they knew that if they tell me, I'm going to go and do something about it, and they will be known as the snitch. So again, your children know how you're going to react. The kids around you know how you're going to react. Make a deal with them to support them through this journey. Because what I did was make a deal with this kid and say, okay, from now on, let's agree that if you tell me something that you don't want me going to tell people out there, we agree this is between you and me. Because the thing that you don't want to do is have them build that wall that was being asked about. You don't want them building a wall where they cannot talk to you anymore. You want them to feel you're open enough. But please understand, I'll tell you from this side of life, they still won't tell you everything. Because if we are honest with ourselves, we also did not tell our parents everything. So the idea is to be comfortable enough with what you're doing with your children, how you're bringing them up, the values that you uphold, and make sure that you're teaching them that from the get-go. So we say start with forgiving yourself, getting into your past and forgiving yourself. Then from there, move on to what is your present, like what's your reality? I mean, I've got stepchildren. That's my reality. That's my children's reality. So we need to talk about that. We need to talk about how that happens. We have had children out of wedlock. We need to talk about how that happens and be real with some of these things. So what I'm saying is, as we get deeper into these conversations, next week we'll be looking at monogamy, because to tell you the truth, marriage to our kids right now is overrated. Anyway, marriage for them is overrated. They know you can get babies without getting married. Corona has helped, at least they don't have to have big weddings. And you can change your mind about things, as you go along. So we'll be looking at that and asking, is monogamy a fantasy? Why are people like Abraham allowed to have, multiple wives? If you think your husband was the first one to sleep with the housey, just go check in the Bible. Those guys used to sleep with their wives, maids. So there's nothing new under the sun as far as the evolution of sex is concerned. We have packaged it better. We have given it nice names. We have called it something that we do under human rights. I actually don't know why people would treat people with a different orientation as less than human, because they're not less than human. They actually are human with a different orientation. So it's how we have behaved that has changed as we go along. And I want to pass on to Mark to actually give a few more comments, and then we have a couple of questions before we close.
Yeah, I guess one of the comments that I liked was the hashtag restore our parent.
Yes, we shall commit to help restore our parents.
And I guess that's where the beginning and the Karibu December Biningi, the beginning and the end of the conversation really will be based on that. I feel like if us the parent we address our issues, it will be easier for us to deal with the situations that our children are facing, and that's the reality. That has been my reality in terms of by the time I encounter a situation with a child, it's frustrating sometimes to realize by the source of this problem with this child is the parent, plain and simple. And sometimes I get aggravated and I get annoyed, and I'm like, okay, anyway, I can't blame the parent, because the parent doesn't know better. That's their reality. They also need to know a few things or to be helped in a certain way. So that hashtag has really honestly touched my heart in terms of if we are able to restore our parent in this nation of ours, it will not be even a problem half solved. It will be a problem 90% solved. The only other thing we need to deal is 10%. And I think the family unit is the way God created it and the way God intended it is basically, if it was done perfect, we did not even need church in the truest sense. Because church was created because we are sinners, we need a savior, and we need to go get help with our sin. But family is really the design that God had created for us to be able to deal with these situations. And my thoughts and prayers go to each and every one of us in our situations that we are all facing. Probably what I'd love to say is that there is hope. There's a surety that God gives us hope that our situation can get better, that our parenting can get better, that our knowledge and our approach to this topic can get better, that situations can get healed, situations can get restored, and that's the kind of God we serve. Yes.
Awesome. Besides social media, is there anything that we have not talked about or handled that we must? I'm looking for the question on social media, and I think there was something about an 11-year-old who wants a phone, and we handle technology, what should I say, separately, but I probably can mention a little bit about it. In today's world, technology is not the kind of thing that you can say that you will avoid having your child getting access to. So what I like saying is that we need to differentiate between access and, like ownership. Like, how ready are you? How ready is the phone? How available is the phone? So if an 11-year-old, for instance, wants to have a phone, does he actually need one? Maybe the answer is yes, he needs the phone. Does he have to be the one who owns the phone? Or is what he needs access? And then there's the thing of, if he can't have it now, when will he have it? One of the holes that parents fall into is putting an age limit to when they will give their child a phone. Why do I say that? Because when your child is 11 and they ask for a phone and you tell them they'll have it at 16, you close your eyes, you wake up the next day, they're 16 and they want the phone. And all they've been doing is waiting for a phone, and all you've been doing is postponing a phone instead of having conversations about the pros and cons of owning their own phone. Any child with access to technology has access to pornography. That's the cold, hard truth of life today. There was research some years back that showed that even when you put your child on YouTube Kids, within 12 videos, they are watching porn. So, I mean, it is so prevalent, and because it sells, it is penetrating every single platform. We also know that the one verse that the whole world believes and goes by, that parents normally don't take heed of, is the one that says, train up your child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. Because here's the thing, the world is training our children when they are young, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. That's why we are starting with our past and ending with perversion, is that our children are being trained for perversion. Cold, hard truth, sorry about this, is that using phones, technology, access to social media, they are actually being trained for future perversion. It looks nice and easy now, it looks simple, but it's being given beautiful names, it's being shrouded in, it looks nice. And by the time they get to where they will be as adults, they will not be thinking any thought of their own. The reason why many of us are having this dissonance is because we were taught one way and now we are seeing a different thing, and we are trying to see how do they even link. Our children are being groomed to think and believe things a certain way, and social media is one of the best platforms for making that happen. So Giving your child access is going to be a personal decision. There's advice that you can get from different forms, but what I believe is do not deny your children access to technology. Monitor it, guide them through the process, teach them critical thinking, so they're asking questions. A young child is able to know to click on the X, and I'm trying to give the most basic instruction, is that when a window pops up, click on the X. Secondly, your children should not be accessing technology without supervision. And even when they have a phone, I believe that it shouldn't be their phone. So there's somebody else monitoring certain things. And yes, they're going to get to the point where they're, learning how to delete history. When somebody is kids who exposed one of my children to pornography. And one of the things that they said is they know how to delete history. They were all of 8 years old, okay? And they were not just 8 years old. We had brought up, I think I had seen some people talk about BSF a little earlier. We had brought them up, taking them for BSF. And when I questioned a little bit about, all these stories, I was told, but her mother is a BSF leader, So we are taking care of our spiritual self, but we are forgetting that we are first human before we are spiritual. And we're not guiding our children through this process. We are giving our children unlimited access and thinking that prayers are going to save them. I promise you, prayers will contribute to saving them, but you can't only pray for your child without teaching them how to think for themselves. So I'd say with social media, don't allow your children unlimited and unsupervised access. And then I feel don't give them a phone by a certain age, give them a phone by a certain level of maturity, which means that you need to walk with them the journey of getting to the point where they can be responsible with a phone. And then the other thing is consequences. What would be the consequences of violating some of the things that you agree on? What would be the consequences of them going to sites that they're not supposed to be on? Have conversations, real conversations about consequences of some of these things. One time, I think when my son was about 13, somewhere thereabouts, he opened, I think it was a Facebook page at that time. And I mean, there were no limits the way there are now. And people started posting a lot of pornographic stuff. And because they were looking for followers and everything, he had like 200 people following him or friending him and whatever. And they started posting certain things on his page. He actually told me, I need to close this page because this is what is happening. Understand that you need to let your kids understand that when they're exposed to pornography by somebody else, they're not the ones who are looking for it. They have a say in how far they're going to take it. If we teach them to be blaming other people and not taking responsibility for the next action, then social media is really, you're sending them into a hole that they may not be able to come out of. Yeah. We parents are the ones to determine how best can be consumed. Yes, social media and technology is your friend. Evolve and help your children through it. Exactly. Yeah. So teach kids digital citizenship and safety. There are also search engines that are specifically, designed for kids and are in most cases kid safe. I've got a very good friend of mine called Evelyn Kasina, who does a lot of digital safety for families and children. If you can look for Evelyn Kasina or Evminet, she will help you keep your family safe digitally. And what I like is that she's got programs that she takes you through as a family, as children, as parents, and helps you even manage your own technology. Because again, many of the kids that we have canceled have ended up accessing pornography on their parents' phones, on their parents' laptops, So yes, you need help to get to the digital citizenship and safety level. Yeah, and use those search engines. All browsers have an incognito mode, so they no longer need to delete history. That's the old school. Thank you, Ahiga. It's not forgetting the softcore pornography on Instagram and the likes. Again, okay, I was going to bring this up when we were talking about pornography, but Instagram is actually, I think, second to Pornhub when it comes to porn. Because when Pornhub went down, when Instagram went down one time, Pornhub views actually went up. Because one of the best places to hide pornography is actually on Instagram. And our children have all of these disappearing stories that they think actually disappear. Mark, you look also, like you want to say something about that.
I wanted to say, on Twitter, sharing pornography is not forbidden. So you can you can see pornographic content from people on Twitter. And nowadays it has evolved. It's no longer what pornography we knew. It is people nowadays have their own accounts where they produce their own pornographic content. And they post it as an ad on Instagram. So you go to that link and you pay to watch what they do privately. Siku zetu ilikuwa
yes,
webcam.
OnlyFans.
Yeah, you remember webcams, like that type of thing back in the day?
I'm using one. Yes.
Now you can imagine in this era where there are even platforms where they have been created, like OnlyFans for you to upload your content that you can now other people can consume. To the level that South Africa is in crisis. Someone was asking on Twitter, should we remove the battery and reset it in South Africa? Because it's gone crazy. Like South Africans they are known to be number one in creating pornographic content on Twitter and on OnlyFans.
Yeah. Wendy is asking, what's that? What do you mean, what's that?
Oh, it's what they're asking about OnlyFans.
Yeah, OnlyFans is the one that's now, I mean, it's where people sign up to watch the porn.
It's like YouTube. OnlyFans is just a platform like YouTube.
You that allows you access, but you pay for it.
Yeah, when you upload and people, you get customers who pay for your content. So it's like Airbnb. There is partly which goes to the company, partly which goes to Uber.
So we are going to talk about accessing pornography like you access an Uber. We shall be talking about that, I think, on the 4th, because next week we'll be talking about adultery. We'll be talking about sex within and outside of marriage. We'll be talking about polyamorous relationships, how Christians are swinging. We have houses where Christians go to manage the excitement in their sex life. And so we'll be looking at this whole sexual present, so to speak, and its effect on parenting from a marital point of view now next week. So is there any other question as we wind up?
My mom said
hi. The realness, yes. Sorry?
My mom said hi. She's on Facebook.
Well, I hope we haven't shocked her. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, if we have shocked or offended you, shocking, fine, I won't apologize for that. Offending, I will apologize for that. But what I would say is, without us looking at our past and being real with our present, there's no point worrying about our children. They're going to show us things that we can't imagine. They're going to show us stuff that we can't even, conceive in our minds. As we go deeper, today I just wanted us to just test the water, give you an idea, sort of like tell you this is what we are talking about. Next week, we'll go a little deeper, then we get into LGBTQ, and then finally perversion. Why? Because it is in perversion that we shall actually really look at where are our children headed. And we'll paint the gory picture and come back to, so what are you going to be able to do about it? Because like Mark says, there is hope. There is hope. This thing is not something that has no ending. We have groups of people who have actually walked away from the LGBTQ journey because they chose to. And I keep saying, these are some of the journeys where it doesn't matter how much you want. If your child doesn't want to walk away from it, you can't do anything about it. This is one of the places where somebody has to be willing to change or to make a difference. And so we'll be looking at all of that and leaving you, of course, with the tools and what you need to know and feel and be and do to walk this journey. So I'll hand over to Mark to finish for us. Yeah.
Yeah, so as we conclude, my job is to I'm liking what people are saying on the comment section. Let me not there's a question for a support group.
A support group for parents.
A support group of parents. We have a group on Facebook.
Yes, Dare to Be Parenting.
There to be parenting. I don't know if it would work on a. We'll look for, but that's what the intention.
The intention was to actually offer support for such things and
Yeah.
have real conversations.
Yeah.
Mm.
Someone is saying that this was amazing. It's kind of our only fun session.
Oops.
Hilarious.
Okay.
Someone else said, are we going to have a session for the children?
Before they open.
Before they open. So that's possible.
Yeah.
That's what we normally do with the plug. So we will let you know when we're having this. We have sessions continuously, but we can do a special one for us with our children and see how that goes. That's what we live for. Yeah.
What I can do is give a form. Let me share a link to a form where anybody who's interested in having their child attend, this sort of session, but of course for children, can actually sign up and give us some information and we'll do that. Yeah, but anyway, continue, Mark.
Yeah, so how can I get my team join the plug? Give me a call or we talk.
Share your number there.
Okay. So that I can actually have contact with the person, because I like being personal. If they come to social media, it might be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you guys for coming for this session. Hope to have many more amazing sessions like this one. So as I finish, mine is mostly vote of thanks and saying a prayer for us as we continue to. Humphrey Washuka has come as we are saying the grace. As we continue with these conversations, because really God is a person ultimately who will help us through having this transformation. The Zoom recording is available. We will email you guys a link to
it's
to
also
listen to it.
It's also on Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, it will be saved on Facebook, so you can.
Yes.
Yeah, but also I think we can share a link maybe somewhere so that
yes, we
people
shall.
can listen at their comfort.
Yes, we shall.
I wish this stuff could be uploaded on YouTube, something like that. But anyway,
it will be uploaded on YouTube and it will be on the Retro Group channel.
Okay, fantastic.
On YouTube, yes.
Yeah. I have a 13-year-old boy. I speak sex sugar coating from today. I will speak. Yeah, you're welcome. Wahiga is offering help.
Yes.
Yeah.
How?
If with the social media, uploading content, anything like that.
Oh, fantastic.
For free.
What I'm doing is looking for the link.
Yeah.
For the form.
Okay. Say, let me pray.
Okay, go ahead.
So that we can finish up today's session. Lord, we thank you for this session that has been amazing. Thank you for each and every person who's been able to hit the call and come and listen to what is there, what information they need, how to approach different situations, and majorly just how to become a better parent in this topic of sex and our children. So I just pray for your grace. I pray for your ability, your wisdom, your Holy Spirit to be upon us, to guide us, to speak to us, to lead us and to guide us in these situations. Maybe there's a parent here who maybe has not looked at a situation from seeing God in the picture. I pray that God, from today, they will see you as a helper in this situation. Maybe there's a single parent who is alone and trying to figure out this situation by themselves. I pray that you can be there for them and give them the way forward, and even direct them to people or to community that can help them in this situation. Maybe there's a single dad who is alone with the kids. God, I pray that you may come through for their situation. I pray that you will come through to our situations on an individual level. We ask you all this in trusting in your name. Amen.
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 Awesome. Thank you all. See you next Tuesday, where we dig a little deeper into this conversation. So it's been awesome. Have a great week ahead. See you.
See you guys.
Bye. Thank you.